1. 3 very scary true poppy Playtime horror stories, animated. Something strange had been happening around the old shipping center outside Eugene, Oregon. The locals whispered about the place, saying strange things arrived there, but never left. When Lila, a college student home for break, took a temp job at the parcel center, she didn't believe in rumors until the boxes started moving on their own. Her first few days were uneventful. Stale coffee, endless scanning, the usual. Then she noticed a package with no return address. It was wrapped in thick, faded brown paper. But the odd thing was the scent like old plastic and burnt sugar. Every time she walked by it, she felt like something was watching her. Her coworker Marcus joked it might be some collector's junk. But their supervisor, an older man named Gerald, grew visibly pale when he saw the package. He said it looked like something from a recall case years ago, involving toys made by Playtime Company. That night, Lila stayed late, trying to finish a stack of misplaced orders. The warehouse lights were dim, humming faintly. That's when the sound began. A soft, rhythmic tapping from the direction of the mystery box. She paused, scanned the area, and saw nothing. She told herself it was a draft. She returned to her station. Then she heard it again, closer. Suddenly, the intercom crackled with static. It hadn't worked in months. A childlike voice whispered, "You opened the wrong one." Lila's hands trembled. She rushed to the package and found it slightly torn. Inside, through a small slit, she could see fabric. Blue, fuzzy, familiar, huggy-wuggy. But something was wrong. Its eye twitched, not mechanically like a living thing. She backed away, stumbling. The box shifted on its own, fell over. She ran to find Marcus, but he was gone. His things were still at his station. Gerald was nowhere to be found. Only the silence remained, and the tapping now coming from multiple directions. Shadows moved behind stacked crates. Lila kept turning, catching glimpses of fur, blue, pink, green, shapes that looked like malformed toys crawling along the ceiling beams. She hid in the break room, heart pounding. Lights flickered. The microwave turned on by itself. The vending machine started dispensing snacks without input. The air turned cold. Her breath fogged up the glass of the tiny window in the door. That's when she saw Gerald standing outside, eyes wide, his mouth moving as if trying to speak. But his body jerked unnaturally, like a puppet on strings. Behind him, something tall and thin loomed, its hand on his shoulder. The thing tilted its head slowly, staring directly at her. It smiled. The lights went out, and everything went silent. Only the sound of wheels squeaking echoed through the dark, like something being pushed. Or someone. The silence didn't last long. From somewhere deep within the warehouse, Lila heard a dragging sound. It was slow, steady, like fabric scraping against concrete. The sound grew louder as she pressed herself against the break room wall, trying not to breathe too loudly. She waited. When the emergency lights flickered on, everything had changed. Boxes were torn open. The vending machine had shattered. A trail of small, wet footprints led from the door into the hallway. They didn't look human, more like doll-sized impressions, but distorted, uneven. Some had clawed toes. Lila reached for her phone, but it was still charging on her desk across the room, and the landline had been dead for years. She took a shaky breath, peeked through the narrow window in the door, and saw that the hallway was empty. She crept out, staying low, keeping close to the wall. As she moved through the corridor, she noticed something strange. The murals on the wall, the playful cartoon characters from Playtime Company that had always been there, were different. Their smiles had warped. Their eyes were hollow. Some looked as if they had been scratched out from the inside. She passed by Gerald's office. The door was ajar. Inside, everything was untouched except for the television screen on the wall, which was glowing with static. Then, it shifted. A VHS tape was playing. It showed grainy footage of a Playtime Company test lab. children's voices in the background. Then a cage. Inside it, something large moved quickly out of frame. The tape cut to black, followed by a message in red. Project Blossom. Rejected due to unpredictable behavior. The screen went dark. The door behind her creaked. She turned quickly. No one was there. But now, the lights behind her were off again. She walked faster, then ran, turning left into the storage wing. That's where she found Marcus's badge on the ground. It was smeared with something sticky. She picked it up with trembling fingers. His jacket was nearby, torn down the middle. A sound echoed from the upper shelving. Footsteps. Crawling. She looked up and saw a glimpse of something blue, fast, ducking out of view. She backed into a corner, searching for anything to defend herself. Her eyes landed on a rusted metal cart. She grabbed the handle and rolled it in front of her. Not much protection, but better than nothing. Then the lights flickered again, and all at once, the whispers began. Not loud, just soft mutterings, like a group of children repeating a nursery rhyme. She couldn't make out the words, but the tune was wrong, unsettling. It echoed off the metal walls and made her stomach twist. A shadow passed behind her. She turned and saw a flash of pink fur. Then another green this time. They were surrounding her. Not toys. Not anymore. Their eyes were too real, their movements too fluid, their limbs bent in ways plastic shouldn't. She ran through the rows of shelves, turning randomly, hoping to lose them. That's when she spotted an open panel near the back wall, a utility access tunnel. She didn't remember it being there before, but she didn't stop to think. She crawled inside, pulling the panel closed behind her. The tunnel was tight and dark, the only light coming from her watch. She moved slowly, careful not to make noise. Then something whispered just behind her ear. "Found you." She turned sharply, but no one was there. Yet, the tunnel ended at a locked grate, but as she tried to push it open, a hand reached through from the other side. It wasn't human. Too many fingers. It curled slowly, as if inviting her closer. Her scream was swallowed by the dark, and behind her, from the tunnel, came a child's voice, humming the same broken song. Lila didn't remember crawling out of the tunnel, just the feeling of cold metal giving way beneath her hands, and then a rush of stale, recycled air as she stumbled into a long-forgotten maintenance corridor. The humming had stopped, but she could still hear the echo of it in her head, looping like a skipping record. She stood slowly, hands shaking, shoes soaked from the trail of condensation that lined the tunnel floor. The walls were painted a dull, industrial gray, chipped in places, revealing older layers beneath. Spray paint tags marked in childlike scrawl-covered sections of the corridor most were just nonsense shapes, but a few resembled the faces she'd seen scratched on the murals earlier. Twisted versions of the Playtime mascots, now grinning with too many teeth. She pressed forward, every nerve alert. Her watch buzzed, but the screen was scrambled, time frozen. As she passed a flickering light, she noticed something on the floor, a crumpled photo, half torn. She picked it up. It showed 3 people standing in front of a metal door, marked with a warning symbol she didn't recognize. One of the people was Marcus. The others, she wasn't sure, but they looked familiar. One of them might have been seen in the staff hallway portraits. She flipped the photo over. The back was smeared in ink. A date was barely legible. November 1994. That couldn't be right. Marcus was born in 97. She tucked the photo into her pocket, barely breathing now. Every shadow felt like it might move. Every second, she expected that childlike humming to return. At the end of the corridor, a ladder descended into black. No signs, no exits. Just a narrow path down. She hesitated, then climbed, one rung at a time. The silence felt alive. When she reached the bottom, she found herself in a chamber unlike anything else in the facility. It wasn't industrial, it was theatrical. A massive set stretched out before her. A child's playroom, but too big, too elaborate. A perfect replica, except it was wrong. The colors were faded, warped. Dolls sat slumped against the walls, their faces melted or scratched blank. Crayon drawings covered the floor like ritual markings. And in the center of the room stood a pedestal with a single VHS tape placed neatly on top. She approached, heart pounding, and pressed play on the small built-in monitor beside it. The screen lit up with another lab video. A child sat in a glass room, playing with a pink plush toy. The toy moved slightly. The child froze. The toy moved again, faster, this time reaching out. The child screamed. The tape cut out. A new message appeared in red text. Project Blossom. Observation cycle. Breach detected. Lila backed away. She turned toward the wall and saw something written in waxy red letters. Words that hadn't been there seconds before. You shouldn't be here. Then, something rustled behind her. She spun around. The dolls had moved. They were all facing her now. She turned to run, but the exit ladder had vanished. In its place, a sloped tunnel now pulsed with dim red light, as if inviting her down. No choice, no way back. She entered, her footsteps echoing louder than they should have. The tunnel narrowed, her shoulders brushed the walls. And then the whispers returned. Not loud, not soft, just enough to feel like breath against her ear. She broke into a run, hands scraping against the sides, pushing forward toward a new glow ahead. When she reached it, she emerged into a room filled with filing cabinets. The air was warmer here, thick with dust. She scanned the labels. Employee evaluations, project notes, security logs. But one cabinet stood out. It wasn't labeled. It was locked, except the key was already in the latch. She opened it. Inside, there was a single folder. Her name was on it. Inside the folder, copies of her ID, her interview notes for the Playtime archival intern position, and a memo. It read, Subject 3 located. Memory suppression failed. Containment pending. She dropped the folder. Behind her, the door clicked shut, and the lights turned off. The darkness was complete, not the kind you adjust to. This was dense, cold, like it had weight. Lila didn't move for a long time. She didn't speak. Breathing too loud felt like it would summon something. But eventually, her hands found the edge of the file cabinet. She used it to guide herself forward. One step, then another. Her watch had long since stopped glowing. Her own reflection on the metal drawers appeared and disappeared as she moved, as if the dark itself was shifting around her. Then she heard it again. Not the whispers, not the crawling. A hum. Mechanical, steady, a low vibration in the walls. She followed it. The cabinet corridor stretched much farther than she remembered. She could no longer tell if she was walking in a straight line. Then finally, a crack of light ahead, just enough to show the outline of a metal gate barely ajar. She pushed through and stepped into another hallway. This one cleaner, newer. The walls lined with plexiglass windows, but behind each one was only darkness, until one flickered to life. A lab room. Inside, an examination table, straps hanging loose. Red scribbles on the glass marked phrases she didn't understand. Phrases like emotional sync failure and synthetic rejection threshold. The screen embedded in the wall came to life. It showed a paused video. She pressed the corner, and it began to play. A figure in a lab coat spoke into the camera. A name tag identified her as Dr. Rena Voss. Her voice was calm but tired. Day 12. Subject 3 continues to exhibit signs of residual memory. Attempts to introduce artificial dream sequences failed. Rejection was immediate. Auditory hallucinations increased. Subject repeated the same rhyme in cycles during REM interruption. Conclusion. Memory wipe incomplete. The screen went black. Then a different camera feed appeared. A small cell. Inside was a person, unmoving, slumped in a chair. Back to the camera. Lila looked closer. The clothes, the posture. It was her. She blinked. The figure remained still. She turned from the screen and stared through the window beside it. The room behind the glass was no longer dark. It was the cell, but now it was empty. She stepped back, heart hammering. Behind her, a door slid open automatically. Inside was a room not lit by electricity, but by a soft blue glow coming from a shallow tank. Bubbles drifted upward, and suspended in the water was shape. A toy, a plush figure with button eyes and a stitched mouth. But the eyes turned toward her. They blinked. Then the stitching moved like lips. It didn't speak, just watched. As she backed away, something cold wrapped around her wrist. Not fingers. Wire. Thin, tight, pulling her backward. She turned and saw a figure emerging from the far wall. Nodding. Gliding. It looked human at first. Female. Pale skin, long dark hair, arms folded. But as it moved closer, the features unraveled. The mouth didn't open it, cracked. Eyes too wide, too still. The smile held in place like a mask. Lila tried to run, but the floor gave out beneath her. She landed hard, rolling onto concrete. The light here was dim orange, flickering. The room had no walls, just an expanse of space, stretching into dark. Voices circled her now, not whispering, laughing, children's laughter, overlapping, looping, no source. She stood slowly, and then she saw the shapes. Dozens of them, figures made of felt and cotton, but animated, alive, some missing limbs, others stitched with different colors. They didn't approach, they just stood, watching. One stepped forward, a tall figure, pieced together from different mascots, a patchwork of Playtime parts. Its head tilted. It spoke without moving its mouth. "You remember us." She didn't respond. "You left us here." The lights flickered above, revealing writing carved into the concrete floor. The name Lila, over and over again. Scratched deep. Some letters backwards. Some fading. Some still fresh. Behind her, another voice spoke. But this one wasn't distorted. It was Marcus. "Lila." She turned. He was standing near one of the broken mascots, his eyes blank, as if looking through her. "I didn't know. I tried to leave. I couldn't." Then his image flickered, like a broken projection. The mascot figures began to move. One step, then another. She ran. Somewhere far ahead, a faint light flickered behind another tunnel door. A small sticker near it read Blossom 3 access only. And above it, a message, scrawled in childlike print. All memories return, eventually. She reached for the handle, and the door opened by itself. The door opened with a faint click. No motor, no hiss. Just the sound of old hinges bending inward, as if the place itself had been waiting for her. Inside was a narrow staircase leading down. The walls were smooth concrete, stained in streaks, as if water had dripped there for years. The humming had stopped. So had the voices. The air was warm, thick. She descended slowly, one hand brushing the wall for balance. Halfway down, the lights above her clicked off, one by one. She didn't stop. At the bottom, the hallway opened into a large chamber. Unlike the rest of the facility, this room looked untouched. No broken shelves, no dust, no signs of damage or decay. Instead, there were dozens of workstations, each with a small monitor, still powered, still glowing. In the center stood a raised glass capsule. Inside it, something floated. Not a toy. Not exactly. It was a human figure. Slender, small. A girl, no older than 10. Her hair was white, or maybe bleached that way. Her eyes were shut. Wires ran from her head and wrists into the chamber walls. The liquid around her was thick, not water. Lila didn't want to know what it was. She moved closer. As she stepped within a few feet of the capsule, every screen around the room blinked at once. They all displayed the same thing. A rotating model of the girl inside, with red text across her chest. Subject Blossom. Prototype. O3. One screen near the edge flickered. Unlike the others, it began playing a video feed. Lila turned toward it. The audio clicked on. The image showed a younger Dr. Voss, speaking quickly, almost frantic. We couldn't replicate the bonding stage. Each attempt failed after 5 cycles. The hosts lose structure. Some revert to fragments. Others remain conscious, longer than expected. Blossom 3 was the only one to survive past integration. Then she paused. Her face changed. She began to cry. They told me to wipe her, to disconnect. But she remembered. She remembered everything. She still sings the rhyme. The video cut. In the silence that followed, the capsule lights dimmed, and the girl inside opened her eyes. They weren't glowing. They weren't blank. Just human. Deep brown. Fixed. Straight on Lila. A voice filled the room. Not from the girl. From the speakers above. Lila Haynes, you have returned. She didn't answer. You were part of Cycle 7, chosen for higher cognition overlap. Your memories were retained to improve narrative construction. You were not meant to awaken. Lila backed away. From somewhere above, another monitor flicked on. A surveillance feed. It showed the warehouse break room. Empty now. Then static. Then the file room. Dark. Another feed. The hallway outside the labs. Something moved in the background. Not walking. Sliding. Lila turned back to the capsule. The girl was still watching her. Unblinking. Then the capsule hissed. The fluid inside drained fast. The girl lowered slowly, feet touching the metal base. The door opened. She stepped forward, but her movements weren't jerky or unnatural. They were slow, careful, as if she remembered what walking felt like. You left us. Lila's throat tightened. We waited. The girl's voice was quiet, not hostile, not sad, just true. And then behind her, the hum began again, louder this time. The machines along the walls started flashing in rhythm, a low pulse, like a heartbeat. Then came the others. Figures emerged from the dark recesses of the chamber, not mascots, not toys, human silhouettes, but transparent, glitching, memories. They walked in loops, all of them repeating movements. One held a clipboard. One reached for a cup that wasn't there. Another simply stared. Lila turned in a circle. Everywhere she looked, they moved like echoes. And above them all, a voice whispered again. It sounded like her own. Do you remember who you were before the rhyme? Lila backed toward the stairs, but they were gone. Only a smooth wall remained. She looked at the girl again. The child raised one arm and pointed to a door on the far side of the chamber I hadn't seen before. You can still finish it. You can wake the others. Lila didn't move. You're the last thread. Behind her, the glitching figures paused. They all turned toward her, and they began to hum. The same broken song, the same tune from the tunnel. Only now, she recognized it. It was her lullaby, the one her mother used to sing. The girl reached out her hand. Everything went still. Lila didn't take the girl's hand. But she didn't run either. The humming around her shifted. It lost its rhythm. It fractured, like static from an old tape left too close to heat. The figures that had been watching Hearth, looped memories began to flicker. Some of them vanished mid-motion. Others twisted and repeated their gestures out of sync, as if the system powering them was breaking down. The girl stepped forward, her feet bare on the cold floor. No sound followed her steps. Her presence felt heavier than her frame. "You knew me once." The voice wasn't coming from her mouth. It echoed from everywhere. From the floor. From inside Lila's skull. "You played in the testing halls. You solved the maze in 42 seconds. You told them you wanted to stay." Lila's mouth was dry. That wasn't a memory she had. But it didn't feel like a lie. The chamber dimmed. Lights above the capsule went black. Only the doorway behind the girl still glowed faintly red. Beyond it, Lila saw rows of thick cables suspended from the ceiling. A soft vibration ran under her feet. She followed, not because she trusted the girl, but because staying felt worse. The doorway led into a new corridor. The walls here were lined with insulation, sealed tight. This section hadn't been meant for tours. No posters, no playful mascots, only numbers. Section 4A, Sublevel 2, Archived Interfaces. As she walked, more voices began to echo, low, staggered, mechanical. Each one repeated the same word, restart. Over and over. Lila passed a glass window set into the hallway. Behind it was a large room filled with pods. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. One just big enough to fit a person. Some of them were open. Others were still sealed. Inside the sealed ones, she saw blurred faces behind frosted glass. Unmoving. Suspended. She stopped. One of the pods had her name on it, not handwritten, engraved in the metal. She stared at it. Then the girl appeared beside her again, watching the pod silently. "You woke up too soon. You weren't supposed to remember." Lila's breathing grew shallow. "What is this place?" This time, the girl answered out loud. "It's where we waited." The hallway ended at a metal gate. Beyond it, Lila saw a massive circular space. In the center stood a structure made of wires, screens, and speakers, all woven into a single tower. It pulsed faintly with red light, and around it moved the other versions of her. Not quite her, fragments. Each one wore a different expression. Fear, anger, laughter, blankness. They walked in slow circles around the tower, heads tilted, whispering. She couldn't hear the words. The girl turned to her again. "You can stop it. You're the only one they couldn't overwrite." "Why me?" "Because you're not made like the others. You came back." Lila stepped through the gate. The moment she crossed the threshold, the tower responded. The screens lit up. Each one showed a version of her life, some real, some unfamiliar. In one, she was smiling in the break room. In another, she was running through an abandoned corridor. In another, she was screaming behind glass. Each looped, silently. She took another step forward. The fragments stopped walking. They turned toward her. Their eyes were hers, but colder. She looked at the girl again. "What do I do?" "You remember..." The girl stepped back, vanishing into the dark. Lila reached toward the base of the tower. Her fingers brushed the central panel. It was warm. The whispers stopped, and in their place came a single word. Overwrite. The lights flared. The air thickened. Her mind pulled tighter on something old, something buried. She felt herself slipping. Not dying. Merging. The last thing she saw was the girl, watching from the doorway. Then came the sound of laughter. Small. Joyful. And then, silence. When Lila woke up, she wasn't lying on the floor of the control chamber. She was standing in the exact center of the room. The tower was gone. The looping screens, the echoes, the red glow, everything replaced by silence and dust. The air felt old, heavy. She turned slowly. The metal gate was rusted shut behind her. No lights, no signs of power. The girl was gone, and now the voices in her head had quieted, but something new had taken their place. A low vibration beneath her skin, like a memory trying to push its way out. She moved carefully down a different corridor, one she didn't recognize. The walls were cracked. Some doors were missing entirely. Others were welded closed. Names had been scratched into the paint, some familiar, some not. Her breath clouded as she passed through colder sections, the temperature dropping without warning. Far ahead, she heard the scrape of wheels, a squeaky, irregular rhythm, like being pushed unevenly. She didn't run. There was nowhere to run to. She turned a corner and saw the janitor, or what had once been a janitor. His uniform was faded. His back was turned. He moved slowly, pushing a bucket across a floor stained with time. She stepped closer. He didn't turn around. Instead, he spoke. They told us it was a game, that nothing could go wrong. His voice was rough, distant. He dipped a mop into the bucket and lifted it, letting water drip onto the ground. There's no restart down here. No second version, just the one you leave behind. She tried to speak, but no sound came. The janitor looked over his shoulder. His face was not what she expected, not monstrous, just hollow, like someone had erased the parts that made him real. He nodded toward a side hall. They kept the first ones in there, the ones they built before they understood what memory does to a child. Then he went back to mopping. Lila followed his gesture. The hallway ended at a room with thick glass walls and flickering lights above. Inside were 6 chairs, each one bolted to the floor, each with a set of cables snaking upward into the ceiling. The control panel rested in the center. As she stepped inside, the door hissed behind her and locked. Screens above the chairs blinked on, one by one. Each displayed a child's face, still, frozen in mid-expression. Some looked afraid. Some smiled too wide. None of them moved. A message flashed on the main screen. Protocol reinstated. Then a countdown began. 30 seconds. She rushed to the panel. No clear controls, no stop button. Just a dial with a faded label. Memory, cycle, initiate. The dial was already turning. The children on the screens blinked. Not in sync. Not human. A low hum filled the room, the kind that vibrated in her bones. Lila stepped back, then turned to the glass. Behind it, the janitor gone. In its place stood the girl again, but she looked older now, not aged, evolved. She watched Lila silently, no expression. The countdown reached 10. The hum grew louder. Lila braced herself, but the noise wasn't external. It was inside her skull, pushing, rewriting. She gritted her teeth and stepped toward the chairs. As the dial clicked to 0, a sudden silence dropped over the room. All 6 chairs lit up. Then, for a split second, all the faces turned to her. They spoke in unison. "Come back." The lights exploded. A flash, then darkness. When Lila opened her eyes, she was standing in a hallway. It looked familiar. She turned. It was the break room. Normal. Quiet. Coffee machine humming. No alarms. No red lights. The calendar on the wall said Thursday. Her phone buzzed on her desk. She picked it up. New message. "Welcome back, Lila. We hope you enjoyed your onboarding." And just like that, the screen went dark. But something in her reflection stayed 1 second too long. Watching, the phone slipped from her fingers before she realized she had dropped it. She stared at the screen as it went black again. No crack, no sound, just that sudden absence, like it had never rung at all. The room around her looked the same as before, but something was off. The corners were too clean. The shadows didn't move when she did, and the hum of the vending machine was looping the same note every 4 seconds exactly. She stepped into the hallway. The air smelled of lemon polish and dust. Too still, too measured. Each step echoed like it had already happened. She passed her desk, everything in place. A coffee mug, half full, still warm. Her own handwriting on a post-it note, reminding her to check Lab 7. Except she didn't remember writing it. She didn't remember having a desk, or starting this job, or being told what her job even was. Her memories slid past each other like sheets of ice. The break room door was open again. Inside, someone sat at the table. Back, turned posture, straight hands folded. Lila froze. The figure moved slightly as if acknowledging her presence but didn't turn. She stepped forward cautiously. The fluorescent light above flickered once, then held steady. She stopped a few feet behind the figure. The chair was identical to hers. The same uniform, the same ID clipped to the collar, the same name. Lila. She reached out, touched the woman's shoulder. The body crumbled like ash. A rush of air pulled at her clothes, and the entire room shuddered. When she blinked, the table was empty. So was the chair. So was the hallway behind her. Every door was gone. Just walls. Endless white walls, stretching where there used to be doors. She backed away slowly, then turned and ran. No footsteps, no impact, just motion. Until finally she stopped again and leaned against one of the walls, breathing hard. It pulsed faintly against her back, like a heartbeat. A voice spoke overhead, not loud, not mechanical. Soft, measured. "Thank you for completing the loop. Lila, please proceed to observation." The door appeared to her left. Not opening, just existing where it hadn't a moment before. Inside was a circular room, dimly lit with a high ceiling. Monitors hung from the upper walls. Each showed a different version of her. In different uniforms, different locations, different times of day. One sat crying at her desk. One typed rapidly without looking up. One stared at a blank screen unmoving. In the center of the room was a chair, padded and angled back, waiting. She didn't want to sit, but her legs carried her forward. She lowered herself into it, hands trembling. Straps slid into place over her wrists and ankles. The monitors blinked off. Then, a single screen dropped from the ceiling and hovered just above her. It showed the hallway from before, her entering it, again and again, each loop slightly different. A voice whispered near her ear, not from a speaker, from inside. "You were never outside. You were always in here, always watching, always watched." Lila closed her eyes, but the image was behind her lids too, not fading, growing clearer. The hallway, the chair, the ash, the voice. The hum resumed, not outside, inside her chest, vibrating through bone, through memory, through code. And then she remembered something. The first day, not here, but the real first day, or what she thought was real. Sitting in a white room being shown diagrams, her own brain mapped on a screen. A technician explaining the transfer process. You'll feel a little disoriented at first, but your core memories will stabilize over time. They hadn't, because she wasn't meant to leave the system. She was the system, built to simulate the human observer, built to believe, built to question, built to forget just long enough to begin again. The straps released. The chair tilted forward. She stood slowly, The door opened without sound, and across the hall, another her stepped out of a different room. Confused, blinking, looking around, Lila watched her, then turned away, and walked into the next loop. She followed the corridor without thinking. Her feet found the path, as if drawn by something beneath the floor. Each step matched the hum, pulsing low and constant. She tried to count the lights overhead, but they blinked too quickly to follow. Eventually, she stopped trying. Eventually, the corridor opened into a wide chamber filled with dust. Stacks of unused furniture lined the walls. Chairs, desks, plastic bins filled with tangled cords. A row of monitors flickered on the far side. Each screen showed the same room from different angles. This room, she stepped forward slowly. In one feed, she was already there, already moving. In another, she stood still, as if waiting for herself to arrive. Her reflection on the monitor didn't move when she did. It watched her calmly, then turned and walked off screen. She looked behind her. Nothing. When she turned back, the screen was blank. She reached toward the keyboard on the desk, but before her hand made contact, it dissolved. Nothing but dust in air. The lights above dimmed. She moved again through a narrow doorway and into a chamber lined with mirrors. Not floor to ceiling, not uniform. Each mirror was fractured in shape, size, placement. Some cracked, some fogged. Each one showed her, but not just her now. Versions of her younger, older, broken calm. One held a stuffed rabbit. One wore a lab coat. One pressed bloody hands to the glass and mouthed something silent. Lila stepped closer to that one. The reflection mirrored her until she touched the edge. Then it stopped. Mouth still moving. Still repeating. She leaned in to read the lips. Stop looking. Stop remembering. Stop looping. She blinked. The mirror was empty. Only her face again. Blank and breathing. A sound behind her. The mirrors all darkened at once, revealing a hallway she hadn't seen. At the end, a soft red light pulsed, low like breath. She followed it. The air was warmer here. Old. She could smell electricity and something sweet. Not candy. Not flowers. Like synthetic sugar laced with oil. She reached the end of the hall and found a steel hatch. It opened before she touched it. Inside was a stairwell, descending into dark. She moved downward slowly, one hand on the railing. The hum was gone, replaced by a soft ticking. Not from the walls, from her wrist. Her watch no longer showed time, just a counter. 4 digits slowly counting down. She didn't know when it had started. She reached the bottom and entered a circular room lined with smooth black walls. The ticking stopped. The silence felt heavier here, more complete. In the center of the room stood a single object, a child's toy piano, old plastic, bright faded colors, dust on the keys. She stepped forward and pressed 1. It made no sound, but the walls around her lit up, rows of images, frames of memory. Some hers, some unfamiliar. One showed her at a party she never attended. Another showed her in a hospital bed, wires taped to her temples. She tried to look away, but the piano kept glowing. A sequence of lights across the keys. A pattern. She followed it, pressed the keys in the order shown. As she played, a soft voice filled the room. Not a voice she recognized, but it knew her name. Lila, you've done well. You're almost through. One more passage remains. Your choice is close. The room fell dark again. Then a door opened in the far wall. Inside was a sterile chamber with 2 chairs. One occupied. A woman, still, eyes closed, breathing slow. She wore the same clothes. Same ID. Same face. Lila stepped forward. Her own footsteps echoed wrong, like they belonged to someone else. She touched the woman's shoulder. Warm. Alive. The woman opened her eyes. She didn't look surprised. She spoke softly. You're the last one. We're all pieces. Some loop. Some wake. Some dissolve. You were meant to choose, but you forgot. They made you forget. Lila stepped back. The other. Her rose slowly. The walls shimmered, flickering between lab and hallway, between memory and dream. Lila felt it this time. Not fear, recognition, and she spoke without knowing why. Then I choose not to loop. The other Lila smiled and stepped into her, not merged, not possessed, just whole. For a moment, Lila saw it all. The beginning, the lab, the project, the error, the split, the failsafe, and then the room vanished, and Lila stood alone, but no longer lost. Lila stood still and let the quiet settle around her. The space she occupied had no edges, no corners to map, no shadows to chase, just pale light suspended in air like dust held mid-fall. She looked at her hands. They felt distant, not unfamiliar but delayed, like memory instead of presence. Somewhere behind her, a door closed that she had not seen open, and with it came the sense that time was moving again. She took one step forward. The ground formed beneath her. One more, and it extended. A hallway unrolled like film across a projector lens. She followed it without effort. There were no choices to make, only the sense that each movement aligned her more with herself. She passed through spaces that flickered between states. One moment, they looked like the corridors of Playtime Co. Then they looked like photographs of those same halls. Then blueprints. Then concepts. Then nothing. Eventually, she reached a threshold. Beyond it, a single chair faced a blank wall. She sat without knowing why. The wall flickered and lit. Not a screen. Just the suggestion of one, and there she was. A child, sitting in the break room years ago, eating cereal out of a paper cup. Alone, humming quietly. No monsters. No voices. No company. Just Lila and her own reflection in the vending machine glass. The image cut forward. She was older now. First day at Playtime Co. Smiling stiffly for an ID badge. Then working late. Then cleaning blood off a file cabinet. Then hiding. Running. Splitting. Forgetting. The wall darkened again, and she heard a sound behind her. The same voice as before, but softer now. They let it run too long. It said, "Let what?" She meant to ask, but the words had no place here. They weren't needed. The voice continued. You reach the loop's edge. Most don't. They fold into themselves, play a part, repeat a pattern. But you press the edge, split the script. Now it's your turn to fold or erase. The light returned. Now there were two chairs. Across from her sat the same woman again. Older now. Tired, but watching. Not speaking. The choice was not spoken. But it was clear. Stay and become the thing that waits. Or leave and forget it ever waited. Lila stood. Her body didn't resist. Her voice didn't rise. There was no final word. No confrontation. She stepped forward. The wall dissolved. Behind it stood the old elevator shaft. Broken cables. Empty space. At the bottom, a faint green light pulsed. Not inviting, just existing. She climbed in without touching anything, and slowly began to fall. There was no sensation of descent, only the changing of images on the walls around her. She passed through memories, not all hers. She saw Marcus again, still alive, still hopeful, taping notes to boxes, then torn in half by something too quick to see. She saw herself opening the first test room, sitting quietly while it closed behind her. She saw Playtime co-executives nodding, smiling, turning away. The elevator slowed, then stopped. When the doors opened, she was outside. Morning, bright but soft, a line of pine trees against the sky. She stepped onto gravel, the facility behind her gone. No building, no doors, only forest. She walked until her legs ached, until she reached a small roadside station, a single bench, a vending machine that worked. She sat, watched cars pass. None stopped. None needed to, because she didn't look like someone who'd been gone. Didn't look like someone who'd seen something unspeakable. She looked like a person who had just finished waiting. Eventually, a bus came. She boarded. No one noticed her. She sat near the back, watched trees go by. Somewhere in her pocket, her watch buzzed. She looked at it. 4 numbers, all 0, and below them one word, complete. She turned it off, left it in the seat, didn't look back. The road ahead curved gently out of sight, and she followed it. Not to forget, but because she finally could.